Hi everyone, welcome to another Sunday Speaks. As always, I'm Cheyenne Severin, and today I'm here with.
Matt Rubin.
And Matt, where do you work?
I work with a company called Turnbridge.
So, this month and last month, well, really just leading up to Recovery Day on September 9th, which, if you're looking for more information on that, you can go to our website at alumnirecovery.org on our home or events page. We are trying to focus on wholeness and wellness. And would you be able to tell me a bit about how Turnbridge does that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe I'll start with like what my role looks like, and then I can kind of blow up from there in a sense of kind of getting a broad overview as to what Turnbridge offers. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, so what is your role at Turnbridge?
Yeah. So essentially, my role at Turnbridge, it's the title is outreach, but what I love most about my role is that it affords me the opportunity to help guide families seeking behavioral health services, whether that's a family member that's struggling with substance use or mental health ailments, or perhaps themselves. Going back to my family, I had my own journey. My sister and some family members had their own journey, and we didn't really have a guide towards that end. We were kind of going onto Google, going to the top three, giving them calls, and kind of putting our trust in somebody that was merely a voice on the phone. I try to use that lived experience in the sense of my own journey and my family going through this, and us trying to traverse the behavioral health space in the sense of just being someone that's going to guide them towards, from what they're telling me, give them as many options as possible. And at the very rudimentary level, letting them know that they're not alone in this.
Mm.
Seeking out help, seeking out services for yourself, your loved one. There could be a lot of shame. There could be a lot of negative connotations with that. And I do my best to create a safe space where we can have these conversations. They know they're not going to be judged. And at the end of the day, they can hopefully walk away with 2, 3, 5 potential resources that may be beneficial. Kind of broad overview as to Turnbridge. Turnbridge has been around for 20 years. It's based out of New Haven, Connecticut. I'm based out of I've been living a very nomadic life over the last 2 years. But currently I'm living in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and depending on traffic, typically takes me about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 to get there, depending on if I take the GW or Tappan Zee. I'm not calling it the Cuomo. Sorry. It's just not going to happen. It's always going to be the Tappan Zee. But long story short, what Turnbridge offers is through a strong clinical affiliation with Yale Medical School, we offer residential and long-term treatment options for adolescents and young adults that find themselves stuck in that revolving door. A lot of my efforts on a volunteer basis with Smart Recovery and Refuge Recovery, I hear time and time again, individuals that go through the continuum of care, right? Maybe a detox, residential, PHP, IOP, and then down to an OP level of care. When they're making that jump from an IOP to an OP, there seems to be some kind of gap in there in the sense of the length of services doesn't seem to be long enough to allow that long-standing change that everybody's looking for. Turnbridge, the young adult program, we're looking at an average length of stay of 18 months. Typically, young adults anywhere from 18 to 30 are with us for just under 2 years. And with that ends, that coupled with the affiliation with Yale Medical School, coupled with the utilization of behavioral metrics, 18 separate facilities, over 450 staff members. All of this is really dedicated to make sure that that individual, whenever cracks in the system, speaking of myself for a second, right? When I went to treatment, when I went to detox and residential, I was able to say what they wanted to hear. I was able to do what they wanted me to do. All the while in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm just doing what they want me to do. And 30x-ish days, I'm out of here and I'm going right back to those maladaptive behaviors. The long-term program is really geared towards when those cracks in the system or when those coping mechanisms start to fail, you have you have a village, you have a community, you have trained professional staff surrounding you to make sure that that potential hiccup isn't going to be detrimental to your long-term success.
Mm-hmm.
Nice broad overview for you.
So does Turnbridge only focus on young adults, or is it just sort of like a subdivision that you mostly focus on?
Gotcha. So essentially, Turnbridge, we offer services from the ages of 14 to about 30.
Okay.
On the adolescent side, in the sense of trying to help adolescents create that foundation towards prevention, right? We found ourselves in a fairly episodic or catastrophic moment. And from there, we need some time to reset so we can repurpose and essentially reconquer all the goals that we're trying to establish in life. And that short term, for lack of a better way of putting it, adolescents with us, it's, they're typically with us for about 2-3 months. We have 2 campuses, a male campus or a male identifying campus and a female identifying campus, 3-to-1 client to staff ratio, that affiliation with Yale Medical School. And really what that's geared towards is thorough diagnostics as well as building a robust discharge plan, all the while giving them a foundation where they can find their feet and slowly build a life that's essentially worth protecting, which is Turnbridge's motto, for lack of a better word.
So I know different facilities have different kinds of treatment methods that they use. What are some things that Turnbridge tends to focus on?
Yeah, so Turnbridge itself is really based on treatment by fact, in the sense of anytime an adolescent or young adult comes to us or, gives us the opportunity to offer services to help them become the person they're trying to become, they go through a battery of assessments. They'll meet with a clinical director for a biopsychosocial. They'll meet with a psychiatrist to make sure medication management is being taken care of. They'll meet with a clinical psychologist for neuropsychological screening, get some of that quantifiable data rather than qualifiable to make sure that we're operating on facts. And then on top of that, they're going to be meeting with our director of nursing or one of our directors of nursing to make sure that with the food, with their BMI, etc., everything is going to, how do I say this? We look at the entire person.
Yep.
Right? It's not just something where we're going into talk therapy for anywhere from 3 to 9 hours a week, very, very bare minimum. We're trying to incorporate recreational activity. We're trying to incorporate life skills. We're trying to incorporate academics, right? We utilize the EMPOWER model. And the EMPOWER model, it's an entire acronym that essentially stands for the well-rounded person, right? We're not just trying to do that physical or that mental labor during that, talk therapy. We want to get the body moving. We want to have interactions that may be outside of our comfort zone when appropriate to make sure that we're looking at the entire individual. We can try to identify potential cracks in the system. And from there, we can put the putty. We can we can cement a new coping mechanism or a new tool or a new DBT focused modality to make sure that they're going to be able to build a life worth protecting.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you incorporate academics?
Yes, on our ends with adolescents and young adults, I would say more times than not, when it comes to my, responsibilities at Turnbridge, I'm speaking with the parents. I'm speaking with the mother. I'm speaking with the spouse. I'm speaking with the grandmother that's coming out of the woodwork from Florida. When you're dealing with the adolescents and young adults, you're really not just dealing with that individual. You're dealing with the entire family unit. And towards that end, academics is typically at the forefront. I would say 9 times out of 10, when I have a conversation with parents or with, relatives or caregivers, one of the first things that gets brought up is the academics, in the sense of whether it's for high school, college, or trade school, etc. All of these things, we completely appreciate the fact that Turnbridge completely appreciates the fact that that's not something that can completely be put on pause. Is your mental health going to be the focal point of your time with us? Yes. Is your maladaptive behaviors around substances going to be the focal point? Absolutely. But academics is definitely, in my humble opinion, a close second to make sure that we're reaching out to the schools, we're reaching out to the colleges. We, low-hanging fruit, we could reach out to the guidance counselors, but in more times than not, we'll reach out to a professional in the school system, whether it's a teacher, a football coach, a dance instructor, etc., someone that has a really good rapport, a really good connection with that individual, that adolescent or young adult, to make sure that we're reaffirming everything, we're reaffirming their time with us.
Mm-hmm. That's so... Okay. Yeah, that's great. I'm just thinking in my head. So, I know you said as well, I'm trying to think, what was it that you said? That I found it interesting, where it was right before academics. Oh, life skills. What sort of life skills do you try to develop there?
Yeah, so a nice, easy way to explain that is for the young adult program, we have a phase system, phase 1, 2, and 3. each phase can last anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on their progress, depending on the family unit. There's a lot of different factors in there. But essentially, phase 1 is about stabilization. And on the opposite end, phase 3 is about community reintegration, right? That first step, that first phase of stabilization, we're driving them back and forth for clinical activities. We're driving them back and forth to a potential job or school, right? They don't have access to their cell phone at first, right? One of the first things that we go through within the first month and a half is having a conversation with their caseworker, with their clinician, even with their psychiatrist in some situations, where we're going through their phone book to make sure that we're removing any of those less than ideal contacts in our phone, right? In the sense of being able to differentiate the people that are going to be there for our future and differentiating people that were using us in some capacity and trying to keep us stuck in that quagmire that perhaps addiction left us in. That's just one example, but life skills can cover things as simple as, making sure, essentially everything I wish I learned in high school, in the sense of maintaining a checking account, how to, go to the bank and write a check, just very simple things where, myself, I was, for lack of a better, broad strokes, I was perhaps a failure to launch in some capacities. And a lot of adolescents and young adults that come to us fall into a similar vein where these quote unquote basic things or basic life skills really aren't as innate or aren't as commonsensical as we would, or as a typical person may think. So we kind of break it down to the most basic things, make sure that we have those basic building blocks, and from there, we're going to continuously build upon that.
Mm-hmm. So is this all part of I know Turnbridge takes part in something called Smart Recovery. Is this all part of that, or is Smart Recovery something separate?
Yeah, so Smart Recovery is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit organization that's international. Turnbridge, as well as a few other treatment providers, do offer Smart Recovery in conjunction with NA, AA, Refuge Recovery, Circle Recovery, a vast number of different modalities towards recovery from maladaptive behaviors, be it with substances or with thought patterns. A little bit about Smart Recovery. It started in about either 94 or 96. It actually started off as Rational Recovery. There's a fantastic book by the person that created Rational Recovery. And, I read his book and he seemed to have a chip on his shoulder in the sense of this one way doesn't work. This is the only way to do it. Smart Recovery kind of took that almost polarizing idea and made it more accommodating to a wide audience in the sense of Smart Recovery is about having support groups. It's about having pragmatic steps towards alleviating these negative thought patterns, feelings, and behaviors. It's based in REBT. Essentially, Smart Recovery came to fruition because it was meant as a support group for anxiety, right? And the 4 basic pillars of Smart Recovery would be 1, building and maintaining motivation, 2, coping with urges, 3, managing your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and 4, living a balanced lifestyle. Now, those 4 things don't need to be sequestered into just an addiction mindset. I'm of the belief that can help any individual with anything that they may be struggling with. In the sense of any form of a maladaptive behavior, be it I am not maintaining the cleanliness of my house, I am not spending my money wisely towards a future, right? All of these different things, those 4 pillars can help with a plethora of different things. Me, myself, Smart Recovery is one of those things or one of those modalities that really spoke to me because at its core, in my opinion, it really helps me build a sense of self-efficacy and a self-empowerment in the sense of I can do this myself. I'm someone that my brain is going 10,000 miles a minute, right? So being able to have an actionable plan or a way to channel that energy, be it, something positive with passion or something negative with anxiety, I'm able to channel that into a way where it's going to be productive, right? The whole idea of having something within our control and not within our control, right? The power, the wisdom to know the difference, et cetera, right? The phrase we've all known, we've all heard. That idea or that concept, Smart Recovery, in my opinion, takes that concept. It's like, okay, this is out of my control, but what is within my control? Is maybe perhaps going over a Smart Recovery tool or perhaps giving somebody a call going to be a little bit more beneficial compared to what I may have done in the past with those maladaptive behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I heard about something else too. I think it was refuge recovery or something.
Yeah, refuge
Yes.
recovery.
Refuge recovery.
Refuge recovery, or it may now be more known as Dharma recovery. Dharma recovery essentially encompasses the Buddhist ideals, or the Buddhist ideals, in the sense of they have the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? So if smart recovery is the more pragmatic, actionable way about maintaining a life worth protecting, refuge recovery is more about an introspective look, in the sense of groups can be facilitated by anybody. The first part of a group is essentially a guided meditation where you cover topics such as love, loss, forgiveness. Forgiveness really kind of hits me in my core, and I get goosebumps every time I bring it up because, going back, I celebrated about 5 years, maybe a month or two ago, my new, life that I've built. And one of the first refuge recovery meetings that I attended and was really, a part of, or really resonated with, was a meditation for forgiveness. And you start off by forgiving somebody that you don't know, somebody that, was driving on the highway, maybe going a little bit too slow, right? Easy example. Then you forgive someone that's in your family. Okay, forgiving family, and we do our best to forgive them. Then you forgive a stranger. Okay, it's a little more difficult. Then you forgive an enemy. Definitely turning up the heat a little bit, but the most difficult one for me that actually had me break down and, leave, just because I was afraid to confront it at the time, was forgiving myself. That was a concept that it was a hurdle I never thought I'd overcome, in the sense of, the lying, the stealing, the cheating, everything that I did in active addiction. Really, how could I ever forgive myself? And refuge recovery provided me the space. It provided me the guided meditations. And as I mentioned, the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, in the sense of almost like road markers, in the sense of when you find yourself wayward, you find yourself a little bit lost, it's instead of going out and seeking something, it's realizing that everything you need is within you. And from there, being able to kind of shift our perspective.
Okay. So how did you, I guess through various meetings, like you said, and the different techniques, but like, was there a point that like allowed you, was there a turning point where you were like, I'm ready to forgive myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those, I think the coined phrase now is core memory.
Mm-hmm.
One of my coined memories in my new life, past addiction and in recovery, is I moved into a sober living after being in treatment for numerous days, months, etc. And somebody said a statistic to me. There were two things that I hold on to that really helps me traverse that or overcome that hurdle. And one of them was that statistic, in the sense of 90% of individuals that are in recovery within their first year will have some kind of mishap, some kind of speed bump, some kind of roadblock. And, that the motivation to be that 10%, to not be another statistic, right, in the sense of that pragmatic, that coupled with a picture of my nephew, even in my darkest days, anytime I'd go to see my sister, my nephew was 4 or 5, maybe 6 at the time. His eyes lit up every time he saw me. I would be, just distraught, holes in my clothing, stopping by, trying to, do something despicable to my family. And my nephew didn't see that. My nephew saw Uncle Matt. My nephew saw Uncle Matcha, is what he used to call me. And I had a picture of him. And that idea that if he can love me this much, if he can see past and forgive all of those past things that I did, whether it was on a a conscious level or not, I can try to do the same for myself. I can make the attempts. And, maybe a month prior, before moving into, maybe 2 months prior, I was at the end of my rope, and I'm like, you know what? Let's try this. Let's try this recovery thing, and let's try to put all the tools in our arsenal to give it the best shot that we have, because we know the alternative. And that's not something that, we know where that decision is going to lead. We know exactly where that road goes down, and we're going to be stuck in that same swamp and eventually find ourselves in a place of complete, hopelessness. So my nephew and that statistic, in the sense of just not being another statistic, is what really motivated me.
Thank you, Matt. We're out of time for today, so do you have any last comments, questions, or concerns before we end off?
I appreciate you, Cheyenne. I really appreciate the opportunity. Alumni in Recovery, I went to your last or previous two events. I've always had a great time. I'm looking forward to this year's. I know my buddy's going to be in the band this year, which I'm very excited to see. Hopefully I'll get to bring the entire family, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I really hope you guys continue. And if I can ever be of support in any capacity to you guys or somebody that you may be trying to help, please call, text, carrier pigeon anytime. I'm always happy to help.
Thank you, Matt. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Recovery Day.
Appreciate you, Cheyenne. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Goodbye.